There's someone in your life who leases a new car every 3 years, eats out 4 nights a week, takes 2 vacations a year, and somehow just bought their second rental property. While you're still driving the paid-off 2010 sedan, brown bagging lunch, saving 30% of your paycheck, wondering why the numbers never seem to add up. And the worst part isn't the gap between your balance sheets. The worst part is the quiet voice in your head that says, "I'm doing everything right, I have the discipline, I have the sacrifice, I have the receipts." That voice is right, and that's exactly the problem. Because somewhere between doing everything right and building real wealth, a critical piece got lost. And today, you're going to see exactly where it went. Here's the uncomfortable truth that nobody in personal finance wants to say out loud. Discipline without a destination isn't a virtue. It's a beautifully constructed dam holding back enormous power, sitting in a valley with no river to feed. Every month you build higher walls, reinforce the foundation, admire your work. And every month a little of what you stored silently evaporates, not because you did something wrong, because the dam was never designed to flow. Before this is over, you're going to understand why your discipline, the exact thing you were told would set you free, may be the invisible ceiling keeping you from real wealth. And more importantly, you're going to see the one shift that changes the entire equation. Not a different budget, not a different app, a different way of thinking about what money is actually for. Let's start with physics, not metaphorical physics, actual thermodynamics. One of its core principles states that energy stored in a closed system degrades over time. Leave water in a sealed container long enough and it evaporates. Leave heat in an insulated room and eventually it dissipates. Nothing in a closed system stays static. It either flows and creates work, or it stagnates and decays. Your savings account is a closed system. And inflation is the second law of thermodynamics, running silently in the background, degrading every dollar you store by roughly 2.5 to 3.5% every single year. Discipline built the dam magnificently. But nobody told you the water inside was already slowly turning to vapor. Now here's where it gets specific, because this isn't about whether you should save. Of course you should. The question is what saving actually means in an economy where the cost of standing still is real. The disciplined saver operates on a principle that sounds unimpeachable: minimize expenses, maximize the balance. Every dollar preserved is a dollar protected. Except a dollar preserved at 0.5% in a high-yield savings account loses 2 to 3 percentage points annually to inflation. You're not protecting wealth, you're watching it evaporate in slow motion while the discipline keeps you congratulating yourself for the process. That's the trap, not carelessness, precision, applied to the wrong outcome. The person in your life who appears to spend more, they're not operating without discipline, they're operating with a different question. The disciplined saver asks, how do I preserve what I have? The strategic deployer asks, where can this dollar generate more than it costs? That's not reckless. That's return on capital logic applied at the individual level, the leased car that feels like waste. For someone in sales, it may be the tool that generates $180,000 annually, a 600% return on the expense. The annual vacation that feels irresponsible. Structured as a professional development trip, it becomes a tax-deductible investment in relationships that close six-figure contracts. The meal's out. Some people eat alone. Others are quietly building the network that will fund their next property acquisition. The distinction isn't spending versus saving. It's closed system versus open system. Water held in a sealed dam versus water flowing through irrigation channels. One holds everything it has, the other multiplies what moves through it. Consider two people starting at 30, same income. The disciplined saver refuses every expense that isn't essential. Over 5 years, they save $180,000 and maintain their annual salary of $65,000. The strategic deployer invests $3,000 in a professional certification in year 1, increases their salary to $95,000 within 2 years, and despite spending on growth, accumulates $240,000 by year 5. That's a $60,000 gap created not by spending carelessly, but by spending $3,000 with precision. The disciplined saver looked at that certification and saw 3 months of savings at risk. The strategic deployer looked at the same 3,000 and saw a $30,000 annual income increase compounding for decades. Linear savings growth means setting aside $1,500 monthly for 30 years produces roughly $540,000, ignoring inflation. Deploying $1,000 monthly into assets, averaging 10% annual returns for the same 30 years, produces $2.3 million. The difference isn't the amount, it's the direction of the water. Here's the reframe that changes everything, and this is where most financial content completely misses the point. The problem was never your discipline is exceptional. The problem is that you learned discipline in the wrong school. You were taught that the goal of financial discipline is to protect capital. But the actual goal of financial discipline, the goal that wealth builders internalized early, is to deploy capital with precision. Discipline is how you control the dam gates. Strategy is what determines where the water flows. One without the other is an engineering marvel that does absolutely nothing for the valley below. This is the behavioral economics finding that rarely makes the news. Research on high net worth individuals consistently shows their financial discipline isn't primarily expressed through restriction, it's expressed through selectivity. They say no to hundreds of things with military precision, but they say yes aggressively, almost counterintuitively, to expenses that generate returns exceeding their cost. They're not more disciplined than you, they're disciplined about different questions. And here's where the dam metaphor gets uncomfortable. Because the longer you run a closed system at maximum efficiency, the more psychologically difficult it becomes to open any gates. Every potential investment starts to feel like a threat to what you've built. Every strategic expense looks like a breach in the wall you've been reinforcing for years. This is a real cognitive pattern. The more willpower you spend maintaining the closed system, the less mental capacity you have to evaluate whether the system itself is the right one. The dam becomes not just a financial structure, it becomes an identity, and questioning the dam means questioning you. So you keep saving and the balance grows, and inflation keeps running, and the person with the leased car and the business dinners and the strategic vacations keeps quietly accumulating rental properties. And none of it makes sense from the outside because you did everything right, every rule, every sacrifice to the letter, and somehow the scoreboard doesn't reflect it. Here's the truth that nobody wants to say because it's genuinely uncomfortable. You don't have a discipline problem, you have a destination problem. You built a dam so well engineered, so precisely constructed, that it became the point. You optimized the container and forgot to design the output. Wealth isn't built by accumulating water in a sealed valley. Wealth is built by controlling the flow, directing it to where it multiplies, where it irrigates, where it compounds into something the original drop could never have produced alone. Your discipline is the most valuable tool in the room, but a tool used on the wrong problem doesn't build anything, it just wears down the hands holding it. The shift isn't about spending more, it's about changing the question that governs every financial decision. Not how do I protect this, but where does this generate more than it costs? That question, asked consistently, applied with the precision you already have, is what converts a beautifully engineered dam into a wealth-building system. Same discipline, different direction, exponentially different outcome. Your $3,000 toward professional development, what's the 10-year income differential? Your business relationship dinner, what's the network value compounding at? Your strategic investment in skills, what doors open that are currently sealed? When discipline meets strategy, the dam doesn't disappear, the gates open, and the water finally goes somewhere. One more thing worth sitting with, the most expensive thing you own isn't a liability or a depreciating asset. It's a closed system running on maximum efficiency in the wrong direction. Every month it operates without strategic output is a month of compound interest working against you instead of for you. The question isn't whether to save. The question is whether the system you've built is designed to create wealth or to preserve the feeling of safety. Those are two very different engineering problems, and only one of them has a solution that scales.